Can you believe it? Korea went crazy back then. We must drive Chinese characters out of textbooks. The result is now, they can hardly even understand the constitution of their own country. After more than half a century of forcibly abolishing Chinese characters, current Korean upper-class society, he is actually trying his best to force his child relearn Chinese characters. Many young Koreans now look at the historical books of your own country. It's like reading a heavenly book. Even the genealogy of his ancestors. You have to use translation software. Only then can one reluctantly acknowledge power. Who kicked out Chinese characters back then? Shouting for cultural independence. Why have my intestines been destroyed again now? We must invite the Chinese characters back. What the hell is going on? If you think this is just because Koreans suddenly discovered their conscience, recognize the greatness of Chinese culture, then you think this matter is too simple. Behind this matter, hidden in a 50-year cultural womb, it also hides the most cruel chain of class contempt in Korean society today. If you have Korean friends around you, you can take a look at his ID card. Except Korean name, there is also a Chinese name written in brackets next to it. What the hell is going on? You must first understand the most basic common sense. Those Korean words with circles and lines that we usually see. It is not considered a complete and independent semantic language at all in linguistics, but a pure set of phonetic symbols. To put it bluntly, Korean is equivalent to our Chinese pinyin. Koreans abolished Chinese characters and only used Korean characters. This is equivalent to allowing 1.3 billion Chinese people to write in pinyin for 50 years. Close your eyes and think about it. If I send you a WeChat message, it has pinyin written all over it. History. You know I'm talking about the history of history, or the history of facts. Still shitting shit. This is no joke. This is the daily breakdown that Koreans are experiencing every day. Nearly 70% of the vocabulary in Korean comes from ancient Chinese slang words. When they forcibly removed the Chinese characters, when only retaining pinyin symbols, an epic homophone disaster broke out completely. In Korean pinyin, the story and the ancient temple have the same pronunciation. Sir and blind man have the same pronunciation. Even the name of the capital of South Korea was abruptly changed from Seoul to Seoul, just to deliberately erase the traces of Chinese characters. But the problem is, this kind of self-deception, not only did it not allow them to gain so-called cultural confidence, instead, it almost killed them. 2009. South Korea's Jeonju high-speed railway Phase 2 project. A super scandal that shocked the world broke out when the construction party is laying the rails. Horrifying discovery. A full 155,000 expensive concrete sleepers. There were serious cracks all over. After a frantic investigation, the final cause of the accident found. All the intellectuals in South Korea were so embarrassed that they could not even lift their heads. It turns out that it was in the Korean construction manual for this project. The designer's original intention was to require waterproof materials, but in Korean, the pronunciations of waterproofing and releasing water are exactly the same. The supplier directly delivered water-releasing materials that will absorb water and expand. This is the price of abolishing Chinese characters. A mispronunciation of a word directly ruined a national infrastructure project. But this is not the most terrifying thing. Where it really hurts is in the legal and medical fields. South Korea's legal provisions are extremely strict. Many proper nouns once expressed in pure Korean, judges and lawyers themselves will read serial. So until today, South Korea's constitution and many important legal texts, key points must still be remarked in parentheses using Chinese characters. In the hospital casebook, if you don't write Chinese characters, it's easy for doctors to mistake Athena for the same sounding Athena. Since abolishing Chinese characters will bring such terrible trouble, why did they get angry and kick it out back then? There is actually a conspiracy hidden here. Let's push back the time to 1443, the Joseon dynasty. At that time, King Sejong invented Hangul. But what you don't know is, when this set of pinyin writing was first invented, North Korean intellectuals and Yamban aristocrats despised it extremely, downgraded it to Yenwon, that is, a crude saying spoken by ordinary people. In the upper-class society of Korea at that time, only write Chinese characters, read the 4 books and 5 classics. Only one deserves to be called a scholar. King Sejong did this pinyin, the only original intention. It's because of the illiterate farmers at the bottom. I really can't learn complicated Chinese characters in order for them to understand even the simplest notice. Only then did we come up with such a cheap literacy tool. In other words, from the birth of this set of texts, it's been branded with the bottom layer. Chinese characters are the privilege of the nobility. Korean is a crutch for illiterate people. Then why in modern times? This crutch has become orthodox. This has to mention the year 1970. Park Chung-hee, the man who changed the fate of Korean culture. That year, the Korean government officially promulgated Korean Exclusive Purpose Act. Force all government documents, school textbook, street sign, abolish all Chinese characters. Many people think that Park Chung-hee did this is to incite nationalist sentiments, gain political capital for yourself. But if you think carefully about the background of the times, South Korea in 1970, at the beginning stage of the Han River miracle, the country will implement a 5-year economic development plan. There is an urgent need to transport large quantities of illiterate farmer farming in the field, quickly stuffed into a bloody factory. Go pick up a sewing machine, go and unscrew. If you teach them Chinese characters, the cost of learning is too high, cycle is too long, and learn that Korean pinyin-like system, just a few days, you can understand a few basic operating instructions. To put it bluntly, forced abolition of Chinese characters, not a high cultural awakening at all, but in order to achieve the goal in the shortest possible time, mass production of a generation, cheap labor who can read factory instructions. For economic takeoff, Koreans cut off their own cultural arteries with their own hands. In the short term, Park Chung-hee did win. South Korea's illiteracy rate plummets. The economy took off. But when the time comes 50 years later, when the younger generation who can only read Korean grow up, this thunder laid by history finally blew Korean society to pieces. Today's young people in Korea, sadly, I find that I have become a group of people who have lost their roots. They walked into the history museum of their country, looking at the Chinese character plaque hanging on the Gwanghwa door, looking at the battle diary written by General Yi Shunchen, looking at the family tree left by my ancestors. I can't understand a single word. In order to understand the historical documents of ancient Korea, some young people, I even had to ask for help with an English translator. The descendants of a country must pass English. Learn about the history of your ancestors. Is there any joke more ridiculous than this in the world? But reality is far crueler than a joke. When the young people at the bottom are still confused because they cannot understand ancient Chinese, South Korea's chaebols and elites have long quietly raised the butcher's knife. Do you think the abolition of Chinese characters is really for the sake of equality for all living beings? Big mistake. Now in Korea, Chinese characters have long since become an invisible and cruel class filter. Go take a look at Samsung now. Recruitment inspiration from these top Korean chaebol companies in modern times. Requirements for clearly marked prices inside. Applicants must possess a Chinese character proficiency level certificate. Sky Alliance in Korea. That is Seoul National University, Korea University, Yan's University. These top student benefits, jurisprudence, medicine, textbooks for high-end finance majors, still filled with a lot of Chinese characters. Poor children happily learn pure Korean in public schools, thinking that they have mastered the country's writing. But when it comes time to really cross the class, to get into a top university, when I want to go to a big chaebol to get a high salary, they discovered to their despair, the Chinese character that was abolished by the government, still firmly in the hands of the rich and powerful. South Korea's elite have never given up on Chinese characters. They enroll their children in the most expensive Chinese character cram school. Let them read the Analects of Confucius and Mingzi from an early age, because they know better than anyone else. Korean only guarantees that you can understand instructions on the assembly line. Only Chinese characters can make you stand in court, in front of the operating table, at the boardroom table, take real power. The abolition movement more than 50 years ago, in the name of national pride, in fact, in the whole society, completed a covert cultural castration. It deprives the general public of reading history, the ability to think deeply and climb upward, completely turning Chinese characters into a kind of a luxury that only a few nobles can enjoy. Now Korean society has finally woken up from the pain. More and more experts and scholars begins to desperately call for the restoration of Chinese character education. South Korea's Ministry of Education has even begun to try relabeling Chinese characters in primary school textbooks. But it's too late. Once a cultural gap is formed, like an ancient art that has been chopped off. If you think about it again, how can it be something that happens overnight? Text has never been a simple communication tool. It is the code left in our blood by our ancestors. It is the most ironclad evidence that a nation has survived on this land. Why can Chinese people read bamboo slips from more than 2,000 years ago? Why can Li Bai and Du Fu be separated by thousands of years of wind and frost, opposite under the moon? It's because of the ideographic system of Chinese characters. Like an indestructible steel bar, 5,000 years of civilization are tightly locked together. Korea lost its Chinese characters, like a nouveau riche who has lost his memory, holding banknotes in hand. But I don't know where I come from, don't even know where to go. Who can you blame for all this? Self-sown bitter fruit. No matter how hard it is, they can only swallow it themselves.